Now, as you've probably seen right across the country, and as you will know for sure if you're tuning in from Sydney, the harbour city has been blanketed in thick and acrid smoke since the early hours of this morning. This smoke has been blown in from bushfires north of Sydney. It's hanging around for most of the day. It is a health risk, especially to asthma sufferers and the like. Similar smoke has been around on and off for days, but it seems much, much worse today. And as you can see, it's not very pleasant. This is unusual, but as with anything to do with weather and bushfires these days, it's bringing out the worst in the climate activists and the political activists who always try to portray events as unprecedented and therefore part of their climate alarmist case. Here's ABC commentator Jane Caro on Twitter. She says the smoke haze in Sydney is unbelievable this morning. We really do seem to be fiddling while Australia burns. Are there any leaders in either of our major parties prepared to speak out, or will they be labelled extremists or tribalists for even noticing? It's not even summer, she tells us. And tech billionaire Mike Cannon-Brookes, a climate alarmist too, who nonetheless bought a $100 million harbour front mansion, also took to Twitter. He blamed the Prime Minister, saying, "How good is having more and intense fires because we're doing nothing about our climate impacts?" Thereby making up stories about how the fires start, making up stories about how intense they are, and making up stories about what Australia is doing, and pretending all along that somehow Australia can change the weather. It does your head in, this stuff, doesn't it? Yes, the smoke is bad. The bushfires are terrible. But for perspective, it's always good to look at history, to look at facts. We could go to the Goulburn Evening Post of November the 12th, 1951, for instance, for a story about how bushfires had created smoke haze affecting air services in Sydney. Dense smoke haze from bushfires closed all civil and RAAF aerodromes for 4 hours this morning. Services were interrupted at 6:30 a.m. at Kingsford Smith and Bankstown aerodromes and the RAF stations at Schofields and Richmond. Or even earlier in the year, back in October 1936, the Adelaide News tells us of bushfire smoke creating havoc on Sydney Harbour. A haze as thick as fog descended upon Sydney Harbour and the coast at dawn today. It came from the bushfires further inland and was wafted seaward by a slight westerly breeze. The motor liner Neptuna from Hong Kong found herself in the haze for a time and sent a radio message that she was close at hand. While she was cruising along warily, the signal at South Head could be heard. They could not see up the harbour or across the heads and could not tell whether the Neptuna was between the heads or whether she'd entered the port. That's how bad the smoke haze was in 1936. And in November of that same year, there were reports of a heat wave across the state. And in the Newcastle Sun, they said that there was a smoke haze, an amazing smoke haze from bushfires that extended along the whole New South Wales coast. The trouble with the climate alarmists and the green activists is that they don't want to look at history. They want to catastrophise everything now. They have the memories of millennials, but don't even bother to use Google to check their claims.